So as Amy mentioned, I am Bentley Ponder. I'm the Director of Research and Evaluation at the Georgia Department of Early Care and Learning. I don't think that many people realize, and I'm sure everyone in this room does, but we'll just say it, that Georgia has a unique education department. So we have our Department of Ed, and then we also have our Department of Early Ed, or Early Care and Learning. And that's something that many states do not have. I think we share that distinction with Massachusetts and Washington State. That means that our early care and learning initiatives are administratively distinct, but I think one of the challenges that we have is we're so psychologically connected and linked to each other. And so if we're going to improve third grade reading scores, if we're going to, as Dana so eloquently put it, make sure that we have a 21st century workforce, then we all have to work together. And that starts with all of these federal and state and local programs under the 0 to 3 moniker. So I'm going to start off, I think that every good story, and I'm going to start off, and I'm going to pretend that this is a story, though it's a story whose ending we just don't know yet, begins with a quote. For those of you that know me, I'm from Nashville, Tennessee, so my quote has to encompass music. You know, I'm from the music city. My sister told me over the weekend that Nashville is now the IT city, and recently named that distinction by something. I'm not sure who named it that, but I thought it would be important to start off with some really simple quotes. So when you look at this, kind of on the surface, for me, this reflects one was my freshman year in college, the Tom Petty one, and then the Reba one, well, that Nashville connection is obvious. It also represents the theme song to a failed Delta Burke sitcom in the early 1990s. So for those of you that are pop culture junkies, you can look that one up. But when you go a little deeper here, what we see is that these represent the idea of moving forward, the faith that we are moving forward, but also that there is some element of mystery. We're not exactly sure where we are going. And if you especially look at the Tom Petty one, working on a mystery, going on whatever it leads. When I think of the educational research, our research underpinning in Georgia, it is, and nationally and internationally too, we are at this great moment where both biology, physiology, sociology, all these different areas are coalescing. We are in the process of, implementing good science interconnected with good policy. But we don't know exactly where that's going to lead. And I think that in some ways we might be standing here 10 years from now and saying, gosh, we got it exactly right. We went far enough. We took those challenges. But then on other levels, we might end up in saying, what did we end up doing for the last 10 years? We just don't know right now. So for the next just few minutes, I'm going to just give you kind of Bentley's take on some of the key facts in Georgia and in early education. Beyond that, again, this is just my quick interpretation. We have a lot of data. We have a lot of great stuff going on at the Department of Early Care and Learning, so this is just skimming the surface. Oops. So what do we know? And this is from good quantitative and qualitative empirical studies. So for those of you that, Georgia is the envy of the nation in many ways for our nationally renowned pre-K program. And though we have many improvements that we can make in the program, a study that was released this past year, commissioned by the department but done completely independent of the department, found that children in pre-K make significant gains in their year. Now that is on average. That doesn't mean that all children make those gains, but on average we were able to see an impact there. We don't have a pure control group, so I can't completely attribute it to Georgia pre-K, but knowing that the assessments and the tests that we use, it does give that indication. Now we have much more work to do with our English language learners and some of our children in poverty, but on average we see that children make good gains during their pre-K year. A study that we did about 3 or 4 years ago found that quality was lower in all preferred education environments than we would like, but we know with our quality rated that is improving, and there's some momentum to improve that. The finding from that study that always clicks home to me was that 2/3 of our infant toddler care are in low quality environments. And we've talked a lot. Martha did a great job talking about teacher training. We have great teacher training for our pre-K teachers. We're still working on that for our 0 to 3 teachers. And and I don't even want to get started on payment and compensation for those teachers, but we know that we have a lot of work to do there. And then last but not least, we are starting a quality-rated program. Quality-rated is the way that we rate and assess child care centers. It's a parent outreach program. It's also a technical assistance and professional development program. And we know that this will make differences. We've looked at this movement across the country, but it's not a magic bullet. And so if we really want to make a difference, we can't just assume that one program or one initiative will do that. So what I think is, we know this, but it's not, I can't, necessarily point to an empirical study to show this to you. So in Georgia, our pre-K program has created a great foundation where other early education programs can thrive. Recently, I heard a talk from one of the key early education financiers across the country, and she said, gosh, Georgia looks very different when you look at the child care industry. And we were like, well, of course, because that's the foundation that pre-K provides. And pre-K providing that foundation, if you look at the second point, giving parents a choice between public and private partnership, which is different than many other states do, has really built that foundation, and now we can take our other initiatives and work from that. And then last but not least, and it's a little unfair to put it on this slide because I can show you empirical evidence to this, but it fit quite nicely here, that we may not be doing enough for our children with high needs. And so if you look at the data from the pre-K study, if you look at data across the board, there's much more we can be doing for this population in Georgia. Oops, we'll come back to that. I know you're wondering, what does that mean? So just a couple of points that I want to talk about with our research and data foundation here. One of the things I'm most proud of with my job in working in Georgia is I've been under 3 commissioners now. None of them have been afraid to ask the hard questions. And if we want to move the system forward, we have to be able to continue to ask those hard questions. I will say, and this has nothing to do with me, but some of the neat work that we're doing here in Georgia is receiving national attention. We're getting lots of invitations to speak. I know several of you have mentioned our commissioner, Bobby Cagle, and I think a lot of it is because that data that we are collecting and analyzing that's putting us on more of this national map. But then last but not least, and this comes to my final slide, just because we collect the data doesn't mean that we're analyzing it or analyzing it appropriately. So data collection does not mean data analysis. And so often we talk about all the data that we're gathering and collecting it without thinking of that next step of how are we analyzing it and are we analyzing it appropriately. So now to my last slide, and you may be wondering why I have this slide here. This is my mother and me. My mother's on your left, just in case you were, wondering. It looks like this was a trip to the Sears or the Olin Mills or something in the 1970s. My mother recently retired as a kindergarten teacher, and she was a great kindergarten teacher. In fact, I was a little sad just simply thinking of the children that now she won't be working with. Do I have the quantitative evidence to show she was a great teacher? No, but you just know because you walk in her classroom and you can see it and you can feel it in the interactions that she has with her children. She was also an educational champion for her 3 children as well. And when I think about Mother and what she did for me, I really think about in terms of accountability. I didn't have a personal computer until I was in college, which meant that in high school, my mother actually did a lot of the typing for my papers just so they would get done. And my mother, it would have been very easy. I'm upstairs listening to Belinda or Bruce or somebody like that, and I can still hear the whenever she would call me. I'd hear Bentley, 2 stories down, because she would not correct any of the errors that I had made in my paper. She wanted me to come down and correct them. She held me accountable to what I was submitting and turning in. So my call to action for you is, as somebody who represents a State Department, hold us accountable. Make sure that we are asking the hard questions. Make sure that we are doing the appropriate analysis. Hold me accountable in that regard, because I know that for us to move this system forward and to build on this foundation, we have to continue to do that and continue to do it appropriately. Thank you.